Hey everybody, it's Luke over at Galaxy Tech Review, and today I've got a product from Boost Mobile. This is the Celero 3 5G Plus 2024 edition. It's their upgrade to the Celero 5G Plus that I reviewed about 9 months ago, and this has a lot of new features and improved features over that model. So we're going to dig into this now, and I'll be right back. Okay, so this is the Celero 5G Plus, the third iteration of the 2024 edition. You can see some of the specs on the back here. We still have a 7-inch display, full HD plus, IPS at 400 nits. Now we do have 4 cameras on the back instead of 3, a main 108 megapixel, a wide 8 megapixel, a macro 2 megapixel, and a 2 megapixel depth, and we do have a 16 megapixel front-facing camera. They've also upgraded the storage from 128 gigs to 256 gigs and 6 gigs of memory to 8 gigs of memory. Now you can do the SD card as well, up to 1 terabyte. Still the same 5,000 milliamp battery, 20 watt fast charging, and they retain the 15 watt wireless charging as well. So you can see that there are some major hardware differences with this. Now in the box you're going to get a 20 watt travel charger here, no problems, USB Type-C. This is going to be in the box for you. You can use any other one that you want, but it's nice that they include it in the box. A lot of manufacturers aren't doing that anymore. Now, as far as a charging cable and data cable goes, you just get a USB Type-C to USB Type-C cable. It's a braided cable and it's not super short, so it will definitely work. Of course, the phone comes in the box as well as a SIM ejection tool, and you also get a few bits of documentation here. You will have a safety and regulations guide, and of course you will have a quick start guide as well, so hold on to these in case you need them. As far as the starting guide goes, it's written in English, it's well laid out, it's not micro print, so check those out if you need to. So that's the unboxing. Let's get a closer look. So looking at the build quality of this, again, a 7-inch screen, 1080p resolution on that at 60 and 120 hertz. You've got kind of a matte type texture around the outside here. Your SIM card tray is there, and you can also have a spot for a micro SD card, expandable up to 1 terabyte. On the bottom, we do have a USB Type-C for charging, a microphone, and then our speaker. And we also retain a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack for people who still want to use wired headphones. You can on this model. Now you have your power button and your volume rocker here, and the power button also has that integrated fingerprint sensor, so no on-screen fingerprint sensor. It's built right into the power button. At the top you got a secondary microphone and not much else going on. On the back you've got this nice kind of finish, two-tone finish when you move it around, and a quad camera setup that I went over a little bit earlier, and we will of course check that out in the videos and camera portion of this review. But I like the two-tone finish on the back. Doesn't attract a lot of fingerprints, and as you shift it in and out of the light, it does look really nice. It feels good in the hand with the rounded corners, and I like that because it is such a large display. It's a little taller than what I'm used to, but it definitely can be used comfortably with the rounded corners. So overall, just a nice looking build out of the Celero. They kept a lot of the build quality portions from the first and second iterations and brought them over, which I'm happy to see. Okay, so you have your basic stock Android experience here like we did before with the iterations of the Celero 5G Plus. Again, we have that gigantic 7-inch display that's full HD plus, IPS Gorilla Glass 3, and then you have 2D Gorilla Glass 5 on the back. You have that mid-hole in-display punch camera at the front, which is also going to be 16 megapixels for you there. On the back, we've got our quad camera setup, and I did kind of already go over this, but your main shooter is going to be 108 megapixels, up from 50 megapixels last year. You have an 8 megapixel wide, a 2 megapixel macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth camera. So you do have 4 cameras instead of 3 from last year as well. The internals have also got upgraded here, replacing that Snapdragon 695 with a MediaTek 6879NZA, still an octa-core processor, again, boosts to clock speed, double the storage at 256 gigs, and up from 6 gigabytes of RAM to 8 gigabytes of RAM. It still retains a 5000 milliamp battery as well, but the charging speeds remain the same at 20 watts and 15 watt wireless charging. But looking at this, we've got a few different apps that I've installed, but everything else seems to be fairly stock Android with its Google apps, so you're not going to get a lot of bloatware. Now, they do have this thing called BoostMax audio that's new for this model this year, and as you can see, this will boost that single firing speaker on the bottom with different profiles: music, movies, gaming, speech, and you can adjust the intensity of this as well. So let's do a little test for this so that you guys can hear the difference and see how this works. So there was a sound test, and you can see that the BoostMax audio does give you a nice little bump to your audio. You've got that fingerprint sensor in the power button that works very quickly and very efficiently, and you can also use face unlocking if you would like, so you've got a couple different options there. Okay, so let's talk camera system here, and again, notable improvement going from a triple camera setup last year to a quad camera setup this year. We can definitely do a bunch of different things that we couldn't do last year because we've got extra cameras. You can access Google Lens if you want to in photo mode here. You do have AI Plus enhancements at the top. You do have options for HDR as well. That will turn off your AI enhancements, but you also have filters here for this built in, quite a lot like last year, but the overall camera quality on this is better than it was last year, no doubt. Having the ability to use 4 different cameras makes this more versatile in every way. You can see that we can just snap a quick picture. It's nice and it's detailed, but if we want to make it nicer or more detailed, we can edit that as well right in the app after we take the picture. You do have some settings here for your photos. They're going to be your same normal settings that you would normally have for photos. Nothing major here. You do have a super macro mode, and it's going to use that 2 megapixel macro sensor. So if you want to get really close up on your subjects, you can do that, and it works out really well. You can see macro mode has a lot of nice fine details. So if you're into macro photography, you're not going to have a problem there as well. So we do have panorama. Of course, video, you can do up to 1080p video here. You do have an option for 720p, but there is 1080p. That's what I've set it to. And I have some samples that I will play back in just a few moments for you. You can switch between the wide angle lens, which is that 8 megapixel, and you can do some digital zooming there. And you also have the 108 megapixel main shooter where you can also zoom in with as well. And you can see how much detail we can get with that 108 megapixel shooter there. Even in a video, it is a world of difference, which I'll show you in just a few moments as well. So we've got portrait mode and where we can set our blur length. And you can see that it'll tell you to get a little bit further away if you need to take a portrait mode, or at least what it is looking at as far as the overall subject goes. And you can adjust the blur mode on the fly before you take the portrait photo. So that's pretty cool as well. No problems there. And we can, look at it. And of course, when you process it, you'll see that I've got some nice blur in the back and some pretty crisp edges on it as too. So we also have a beauty mode, a super night mode, which will let more light in for night photography. We've got time lapse, slow motion, motion photo, and we have a professional mode as well. This will let you do your ISO, so you can adjust your ISO manually. Your white balance as well. You can adjust your white balance manually if you would like to. Your manual focus, so you can actually manually focus and get the shot that you're looking for. And you can also adjust your shutter speed as well. So you do have a nice professional mode in here, which is welcome. Let me show you some of the samples that I've got, and you'll be the judge of how well they came out. So this is the 12 megapixel wide angle, and as you can see here, this is just a normal shot, kind of at a sunset, so not full sunlight or anything like that. But switching over to the 108 megapixel camera produces a sharper image for sure, crops it in a little bit, obviously, because we're not using the wide angle, but good details. Here's a closer shot with the main 108 megapixel camera. Does a good job here. Adds a little bit of contrast, as you can see, but you can adjust that in post. But has really good details on that 108 megapixel primary camera. If we switch over to the wide angle camera, you can see that it kind of darkens it up a little bit, maybe makes it a little bit more pleasing to your eye, but you do lose a little bit of detail going down to 12 megapixels. Now here's the normal camera view from the 1080p, not the wide angle camera. And this is also from the rear cameras, of course. And this will give you an idea of the 1080p quality and audio quality from the rear cameras at 1080p on the Celero 3 5G Plus 2024 edition. This is a test of the Celero 3 5G Plus's front-facing camera and what it will sound like and look like when you're using the selfie camera for front-facing video. Of course, wireless charging at 15 watts is still available for this phone as it was last year. Works no problems here. You just have to watch the camera bumps. Just make sure you push it forward enough so that the camera bumps don't raise it off of the charger, and you're good to go. So you can just kind of set it and forget it. If wireless charging is your thing, 15-watt wireless charging is still here. Okay, so I want to test the speed of a Boost Mobile on 5G from my location, and it's close to where I'm at. So let's take a look at how fast the 5G speed is on the Celero 3 5G Plus. We're hitting about 500, 550 megabits per second. So that is pretty good. Not bad, especially for my area. Other 5G services are right around the same mark as Boost is. Now, of course, my upload speeds are going to be lower than my download speeds, but 550 is a solid number for where I'm located. Taking a look at Geekbench scores, we get a single core score of 967 and a dual core score, or multi-core score I should say, of 2389. Now, the way that this stacks up is the Snapdragon 695 from last iteration was a single core of 894 and a multi-core of 1983. So we do have an improvement across the board on a single core and multi-core from the 695 moving on up to the MediaTek. Playing basic games like Subway Surfers here is super easy to do, and you can do this on almost any modern smartphone will handle a game like this. Again, being able to play PUBG like I did on last year's version, I can easily do that with the spec bump that they've given us with the new processor as well. So you shouldn't be worried about gaming. The Celero 5G Plus should be able to handle it just fine. Now, last year's model had an issue with playing HD video through streaming services such as Vudu or Netflix. I am happy to say that the Widevine certification on this now allows you to play HD video instead of 480p restricted. You can get up to 1080p now, which makes this 7-inch screen much better for consuming multimedia content. So this is a welcome addition. This is one of the drawbacks that I found with the Celero 5G Plus from last year that they've fixed in this iteration. You can see that you've got this nice gigantic 7-inch screen, and you've got a nice crisp, clean, colorful image to watch media on, and now you can do it in 1080p and not be restricted to 480p because of the Widevine certification. So it's something that I did want to mention in this review because it's one of the major drawbacks that I had with last year's model. Happily, they have fixed this, and now this looks fantastic. This phone is, with its larger screen, is really made for some good media consumption, and now you can do that in full 1080p. Okay, so that's my full review of the Boost Mobile's Celero 5G Plus 2024 edition, or the Celero 3. This is pretty much everything that they had on last year's model, but just upgraded. They upgraded the storage from 128 gigabytes to 256 gigabytes. They upgraded the RAM from 6 gigabytes to 8 gigabytes. They upgraded the processor. They upgraded the Widevine certification so that streaming media from services like Vudu or Netflix or anything like that is going to play in 1080p instead of being restricted to 480p, which is huge on this device because it's got that 7-inch 120 hertz display from last year that was perfect for consuming media, and now they've fixed that as well. You still retain that 5,000 milliamp battery. You still get a headphone jack for anybody that wants that, and you still get the micro SD card slot for expanding your storage to up to 1 terabyte. There's really not a lot to complain about. They've really just retained all the good things from last year's Celero 5G Plus, and they've just added all the things that I felt last year's model was lacking. So head on over to Boost Mobile and check out the Celero 5G Plus 2024 edition. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. For a mid-range phone, they are moving in the right direction. Boost Mobile has taken what people have said about past iterations, and they've improved in every area, in my opinion. This was Luke from Galaxy Tech Review. I hope you enjoyed my review, and I'll check you guys out on the next one.